road to exile was paved with defiance and pride. Fëanor and his followers, hearts burning with vengeance, marched toward the shores of Aman. They sought the stolen Silmarils, but their path would lead to something far darker. In their way stood Alqualondë, the shimmering harbor of the Teleri. Its white ships, crafted like swans, rested upon the waters, vessels of beauty, not war. Yet soon these sacred ships would be drenched in blood, and the first stain of the Noldor's doom would be written upon the shores. This was not merely an act of war, it was the first betrayal, the first sorrow, and the beginning of a curse that would follow the Noldor for all time.
The march of the Noldor led them to the shores of Aman, where the city of Alqualondë gleamed under the twilight of Valinor. The Teleri, the sea-loving kin of the Noldor, lived here in peace, their white ships swaying gently on the waves. Fëanor stood before their harbor, his mind set on one thing, the ships. With these we shall cross the great sea and reclaim what is ours, he declared. His sons and followers cheered, their spirits high, their anger unshaken. But the Teleri were not so eager. They knew of Fëanor's wrath, of his oath, and of the doom he carried. As the Noldor approached, their lord always stood firm. These ships were not built for war, nor shall they be taken for one, he declared. Tension filled the air. The Noldor had come with expectation, but they found only resistance. And so the first shadow of blood was cast over their journey. Fëanor, his patience thin, stepped forward. You are our kin, yet you would deny us passage. His voice carried across the harbor, sharp as a blade. Olwe, lord of the Teleri, met his gaze. These ships were not built for war, nor will they be given to those who seek it. If you would cross the sea, seek the favor of the Valar, not the spoils of your kin. A murmur spread through the Noldor. Some hesitated, but Fëanor's fury would not be contained. We have no time for delay. Morgoth flees even now with our birthright. If you will not give the ships freely, then we shall take them. The Teleri, unarmed but unyielding, formed a barrier before the ships. You shall not, Olwe declared. For a brief moment, silence fell over Alqualondë. Then the first blade was drawn, and with it, the first act of true betrayal was set into motion. The air of Alqualondë was heavy with silence, until the first blade struck. A cry of shock, then another, and in an instant, the harbor erupted into chaos. The Teleri fought not as warriors, but as those desperate to protect what they loved. They clung to their ships, resisting the Noldor with all their might. But Fëanor's sons, driven by their oath, saw only obstacles in their path. "Cut them down," came the cry, and the harbor was stained with blood. The Noldor, trained in war, slaughtered the unarmed Teleri. White ships became crimson, their decks slick with the lifeblood of kin. Cries of mercy went unheard. Some Noldor hesitated, horror dawning in their eyes, but Fëanor would not be denied. As the last defenders fell, the sea carried their sorrow to the shores of Aman. The first kinslaying was done, and the doom of the Noldor was sealed.
As the Noldor set sail, the waves carried whispers of their crime. The sea itself seemed to weep, darkened by the blood of kin. But it was not only the waters that mourned. The Valar had watched in silence, and now their judgment would be spoken. Upon the road north, a figure awaited them. Cloaked in shadow, his voice was like stone. Mandos, the doomsman of the Valar. You have spilled the blood of your kin unbidden. You have defied the will of the Valar, and so doom is upon you. The Noldor stood frozen as his words fell upon them like an unshakable curse. You shall be exiles, forever bound to the fate of your own making. Blood will follow you, and the Silmarils will bring you nothing but sorrow. In the end, your oath shall lead only to ruin. Some cried out in anguish, others in defiance. But the doom was set. and no road remained for the Noldor but forward, toward Middle-earth, toward war, toward their fate.
Fingolfin and his followers trailed behind Fëanor's host, their hearts heavy with doubt. They had not drawn their blades at Alqualondë, yet the stain of betrayal marked them as well. The doom of Mandos had fallen upon all the Noldor, guilty and innocent alike. Some among Fingolfin's people wavered. "We must turn back," they pleaded. "Let us seek the mercy of the Valar." But Fingolfin knew the Valar's silence was judgment enough. There was no return. "The only path left to us is forward," he declared. "We will not falter now." Yet, as they reached the shores, they saw the ships of Fëanor sailing ahead, vanishing beyond the horizon. A cold dread settled upon them. Would they too be betrayed? Would Fëanor, so blinded by his oath, abandon them to the fate of Mandos's warning? Doubt gnawed at their hearts, but they marched on, unaware of the cruel fate that awaited them beyond the sea.
The ships of the Teleri, now tainted by betrayal, carried Fëanor and his most loyal followers across the sea. They landed upon the dark shores of Middle-earth, their eyes set on vengeance. But Fëanor, ever consumed by fire, saw something else in the night: doubt. He turned to his sons. "Why should we send the ships back for those who doubted us? Why share our glory with cowards?" His words were like poison, and yet they took root. In the silence of the night, he made his choice. The flames rose high, consuming the stolen ships in an inferno that lit the shores like a second sunrise. The light could be seen even from Valinor, where Fingolfin's people watched in horror. Their last hope of crossing the sea was gone. Fëanor had sealed their fate. The only path left to Fingolfin's host was the grinding ice of Helcaraxë, and so, with fire and treachery, the divide between the Noldor was made final.
Betrayed and abandoned, Fingolfin and his people stood upon the shores of Aman, their eyes fixed on the distant flames consuming the stolen ships. The bitter truth settled upon them. Fëanor had left them to die. Yet Fingolfin did not kneel. "We are Noldor, and we do not yield to despair," he declared. But the only path left to them was the most perilous of all: the grinding ice, the Helcaraxë, a land of frozen death, shifting glaciers, and endless storms. With no other choice, they stepped forward. The cold cut deeper than any blade, and many fell beneath the ice, claimed by the merciless sea. For months they marched, their bodies battered, their spirits tested. Yet they endured. And when at last they reached Middle-earth, they did not come as broken exiles, but as warriors hardened by suffering. As they set foot upon the lands of their doom, a new fire burned in their hearts, the fire of vengeance.
The Noldor had defied the Valar, spilled the blood of their kin, and crossed the frozen wasteland of Helcaraxë. But as they reached Middle-earth, they did not yet see the full weight of their doom. The oath of Fëanor still burned, a curse upon them all. The Valar had closed their doors, leaving the Noldor to face their fate alone. Their war against Morgoth had begun, but it was not glory that awaited them, only sorrow, only ruin. And though they had sought vengeance, they had already become victims of their own making. The road ahead was long, and the price of their choices had yet to be paid in full.
Thus the Noldor stood upon the lands of Middle-earth, bound by their oath and cursed by their past. The path they had chosen was one of blood and sorrow, and the echoes of their betrayal would never fade. The doom of Mandos had been spoken, and its shadow stretched over them all. The war for the Silmarils had begun, but in their hearts the Noldor had already lost far more than they had hoped to reclaim.
See you beyond the rings, and don't forget to subscribe.